Coogs House. All right, Houston with a big win in Philadelphia, a revenge game of sorts. And we're not talking about the Astros. Let's talk about the Houston Cougars and Jarace Walker and their big win over the Temple Owls.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're U of H fan or just a hater can stop by, please be sure to hit subscribe down below. That way you get the latest on the Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. We are giving away a new item every 250 subscribers. We're approaching 550 subscribers. By the time you listen to this, we might actually be over that. So at 750, I think we're going to give away a size extra large jacket. It's a Letterman jacket of sorts. Shout out to Galen Robinson for the design. Really cool look. So make sure you hit subscribe down below so we can get to 750. And then to be entered, you need to be liking and commenting on the videos. So comment on the video below. Give us a thumbs up. If you can't think of anything to say after we're done talking about the Houston Cougar win over Temple, tell us what's your opinion on a cheesesteak sandwiches. We're talking about Philadelphia. Anyway, now this show is going to be broken up into 3 segments. The first one, all about Jarace Walker. His performance needs its own segment. It was that kind of great and special. The second segment is going to look at other people get a caps off of sorts, the guys who played very well in the win. It was a full team effort. I don't mean to diminish that, but Jarace gets his own separate segment. Other guys get a segment. And then the third segment, we're going to talk about the X's and O's and what went right in the basketball game. Now, I will say that's a little bit out of order of sorts. Typically, we do X's and O's earlier. However, Jarace needs to go first. It's that kind of important. And honestly, if you like the X and O's, you stick around. I'm not sure everyone's X and O's kind of person after what was an emotional win. Now, Jarace Walker's stat line read 23 points, 4 of 5 from 3, 6 rebounds, 5 of them defensive, 3 steals, just 1 foul, and 1 assist. And if it's possible for the leading scorer for the Houston Cougars to have a stat line that doesn't quite tell you the whole story of their impact, that's exactly what that was. Now, Jarace did lead them in scoring, and frankly, his scoring is the only thing that kept them afloat for a stretch in the middle part of the first half. However, the way he did it and the type of athlete he performed like just the athleticism as a whole that just engulfed the game, certainly superseded any statistical stat line he's going to put out there. I think what's interesting in watching this growth of Jarace has become his passing, right? He had a couple different passes in the game that didn't directly turn to assists. There's one he kicked out to Tremont Mark in the corner. He has backed the basket on the top side of the screen, watch on TV because in Philadelphia, and he started backing down his defender, flipped the ball across the court to Tremont Mark in the corner. Mark pump faked, 1-pound pull up in the 15-foot area and missed. Jarace doesn't get an assist for that, but that kind of vision is what makes him a top 6, 7, 8 pick. Some draft experts were talking online. It looked like some people are putting him into their top 5. And I think what's important to remember here is that the class of 2023 in the NBA draft will be a historic class. Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, all these guys the Rockets are hoping to go after, right? And Jarace is moving into the top end of that group. To be fair, it's not just something about that draft guys are speculating and seeing. Kelvin Sampson himself, head coach Kelvin Sampson, said after the game that Jarace was, quote, starting to find his groove a little bit. And in a world where you don't hear a whole lot of over enthusiasm in post games from Sampson, that's telling. Marcus Sasser, projected guy, might win player of the year across all of college basketball, also nominated for defensive player of the year in college basketball, preseason All-American watch, all those kinds of things. Sasser commented that he was everywhere for us and commented also that he got the job done for the Cougs on Sunday night. Jarace is a full package kind of guy. What's gotten him had been more successful for him in the last 3 weeks has definitely been the way he sped up and made quicker decisions offensively, both in that passing. I mentioned the one across the court earlier, but he also had a kick ahead to Shed. He also, that didn't end up being an assist either, I don't guess. And then he had one that was an assist on a nice little, it wasn't quite a high-low because he was isolating on the short corner on the opposite side, but effectively functioned like a high-low and a drop-off to Juwan Roberts for an and one. That, again, is a tough pass to sneak through, and he got it. It's a Magic Johnson, not like flashiness, but in precision. And he's doing it at 6'9", 240, power forward build, like a Greek Adonis. But what's happening lately is not just that passing stuff. He's had vision all year long. His offense is speeding up. The game is slowing down for him, or he is speeding up, however you want to describe it. But his catch and shoot threes are looking more in rhythm. He shot 4 or 5 from the line. He's comfortable enough taking a bounce, getting away from the defender to create some separation, going up over the top of him, right? He's making the right reads when folks close out too high. He pump fakes 1 pound for a floater. And I'm telling you right now, if a guy 6'9", 240 can go 80% from three in a game, and his one miss, to be fair, was about a 35-footer at the end of the shot clock when he kind of got put in a bad spot. So actually probably more likely call him 100%, but 80% shooter on the day from three-point line. You close out high to go reach that 6'9" jump shot. He pump fakes, 1 dribble. You collapse, take away the rim. Don't let him dunk on you. Take a charge. Floater from 15 feet. What do you do defensively to cover that up, right? What options do you really have to take away Jarace Walker? And that's why draft experts, whether it's Gavoni, the no ceilings guys, whoever you talk to, he's started the season in the 10 to 12 range, and he's quickly, again, we're still in early February. He's already people already talking him into the 5-6 range, right? I would anticipate with a good March, he might actually be in more like the 3-4 range, right? Like, these kinds of guys don't come around very often. And we knew it was going to be a not come around very often type of guy when Jarace showed up to the University of Houston. Guys that spend 3 years at IMG Academy and get talked about at the national level as a one-and-done going pro, all set in stone for him as a sophomore in high school, right? When IMG was on TV nationally, when he was a sophomore, there were dudes on TV talking about, oh my God, this is a one-and-done kid. That long ago, right? Those guys don't typically pick to come grind it out in the nitty-gritty parts of Kelvin Sampson basketball. They don't often pick to get coached by guys that coach like Kelvin Sampson. They go play for the Calipars. They go play for guys that let them free flow a little bit. You got a little bit of a sore hammy, and we'll take it easy on a day. We'll shoot for the next couple of days. That's all we'll do, right? They want the programs that help build them into pros, not the guys that help them compete, win, earn. And I don't mean that as a slight at anybody, right? Those guys go on to have great professional careers. And, I've seen comps of Jarace Walker to Jeremy Grant and stuff like that floating around. I think he's a little bit, just because he's thicker, I think he's a different prospect than that. That's not quite where I'd go, but I see the comparison, I guess. I digress a little bit. Plenty of time to talk about him as a pro prospect later. And enjoying it now. What's clear and what's dangerous for the rest of the American Athletic Conference and college basketball as a whole come March is the train is moving. He's the conductor, and they will go as far as he takes them. And man, oh man, at 6'9", 240, moving full speed, that is one hell of a train. He's got a job in pro basketball next year. And speaking of jobs, let's talk a little bit about how to find the right person for your job at LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn.com is a great place to find people if you're looking for people in your small business. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 will depend on who your team members are and who you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates that more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. If you can find someone like Jairus Walker, do it. LinkedIn Jobs help you find attractive qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools that go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post company and their 875 member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one, delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, so in the second segment, I did say I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the guys that get a caps off or tip the cap to a handful of other Cougs. And bluntly, this is the kind of game where Houston had 5 guys in double figures. Houston had, what am I counting here? 3 guys with 5 more rebounds. Like Houston had statistically a very even balanced night. Jarace stuck out a little bit because he had 20 points when he had a handful of guys that had 10. But B, he kept them afloat in that first half stretch. The second half, Houston really kind of took off and ran away with this thing, right? Now, admittedly, in looking at that, I do think you got to point out a couple different names in particular. First cap off, and we can do this every week, I feel like, is going to go to Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser finished with 13 points. Not his greatest day shooting the basketball, right? He hit 1 3 at the start of the game, and that was the only 3-point basket he made of his 6 attempts. But he did go 4 or 5 from the free throw line. And when you take off the threes, he actually had a relatively good day from inside the arc on his field goal shooting. However, he had 5 assists, which is just like he did in the Temple game the first time. And I think what's interesting in watching Sasser play Temple twice is they seemed very content to turn him into a passer, and he seemed very content to do it. He is able to get in creases and get guys out of rotation on swinging the ball around, attacking and dropping off to Juwan Roberts or dropping off to Javier Francis or dropping off to Reggie Chaney or whomever, right? And the other thing I think is interesting there is that all the offensive statistics are great, but Sasser having no steals surprised me because that doesn't feel like watching him play. He felt like he was flying around everywhere defensively. I would love to know his deflection count. That's a little bit more, statisticians' choice data. I know Houston's going to stat their low tips and high tips, but he just felt like he was all over guys like Damian Dunn and all over guys like Khalif Battle, all over these much bigger guards. He was up in their grill, making their life chaos. And that's a big, big reason Houston was able to walk out of this game with a fairly comfortable 81-65 win. Now, I also feel like it's worth pointing out that he kind of started as a decoy at parts of the second half again. They ran short side. We're doing X's and O's in the third segment. But they ran short side, inside pick and roll with he and Walker a couple different times in ways that let me know that Sampson understands they're not going to leave Marcus Sasser, and that opens up the entry pass to Jarace Walker in the short corner on the block and those kind of areas because the screen just gives him just enough separation to get the ball through, right? Can't face guard both guys on screen and roll, right? Really, really impressive to see him do it. And again, he led the team in a number of different ways. Did have a bad technical at one point, and bad because it was not a great timing. But also, I'm not sure unless he said something that we couldn't hear because it was relatively weird sound stuff. You heard that too, right? Yeah, it wasn't just my TV. ESPN was weird. The noise was weird in Philly. Anyway, unless he said something to a referee that was technical worthy, his reaction otherwise didn't seem to warrant one. But the game won fast in a moment that felt like they needed to kind of calm the game down. And it looked like as a leader, he kind of took the brunt of that. Now, I don't know what the Houston Cougars will do with him for getting a technical. I know my team, it's like you'd attack, you run a mile the next day or whatever. And if I were to get 2 techs and get tossed, yes, I would have to run 2. I don't know that running a mile is actually difficult for Sasser to do or what they'll do with that. But, that could have been a bad spot if, it was a close game at that point and who knows what would have happened. That's a lot on Marcus Sasser, but he had a great game. And the play of the game, the play that will go viral from this basketball game is Marcus Sasser's, I guess you still call it a Euro step, where he goes from one side of the lane to the other full speed on the break, like a triple jump. And they talked about that on the broadcast. It was as if he was a triple jumper on the Euro step. I guess I might feel more like an Asia step the way it was. I mean, Asia is just so much bigger than Europe. No, you don't like that joke. Okay, I'm sorry. It's a giant Euro step, to say the least. And sports center type play right away, right? So caps off there. Cap off to Juwan Roberts. Now, we're going to do a little bit talk later about what it looks like and how we can get Juwan Roberts out of foul trouble early. But Houston was down at the half in this basketball game by a couple possessions and went on a big run to start the half right after. Big part of that run is Juwan Roberts coming back in the game. He got 2 fouls early, the first 5 minutes of the basketball game. And while that's problematic, Houston went into halftime down 4, and within less than 2 minutes was up 2. And by the under 16 media timeout, I'm trying to make sure I get this right. The under 16 media timeout, they were up 7. Temple still had not scored. Right. It took until the 15-minute mark for Temple to score. And at that point, Houston was already up. They were up 9 before the score, and they would go make a 3 to go up 10, and and they went on a little bit of a run there. I know that Juwan Roberts didn't have every one of the buckets in that first run out the gate, but Juwan Roberts had 4 blocks in the game, 3 of them in that stretch, right? 2 of them, sorry, in that stretch, 1 just after, and handful of rebounds there. He did end up with, let me make sure I got the numbers right here. Did end up with 3 rebounds on the game. Again, he played just 21 minutes, which makes the 4 blocks that much more impressive. He had 4 blocks in 21 minutes. And to his credit, did not foul out of the basketball game. He was just a enforcer of sorts. He got his hands on a lot of basketballs all over the court. And on offense, he was always in the right place for the drop-offs. He was an enthusiastic recipient of those drop-offs. I don't have this actual statistic in front of me. It'd be interesting to see. So if you can find it, put it in the comments. But Houston had 20 assists on Sunday night. And Juwan Roberts had 12 points. I bet that at least, 8, 10 of his points, 10 would be all of his field goals because I guess he had 2 free throws. Let's say, did he have all 5 of his baskets on assisted baskets? I feel like he did on all those drop-offs and things inside. Really, really strong night for Juwan Roberts when he was on the floor. Later this week, we can talk about foul trouble and those kinds of things. We've got a couple of lulls as far as game time actions and stuff like that. But Juwan Roberts' impact on the game while he was in, and the fact that he was able to stay in for the majority of the second half, is really, really important the way this basketball game went. His activity and action for a guy that's frankly very undersized. I mean, the guy he's covering is 6'10", 260, right? Like, Juwan Roberts is 6'8" and change. Big matchup for him, and he continues to dominate these bigger guys. Maybe getting a little physical, and that's why his foul count goes up. But also because he's just that energetic, enthusiastic, and aggressive, right? Speaking of energetic, enthusiastic, and aggressive, we got to talk some caps off to Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead led the team in assists, and he had a bunch of those drop-offs, whether it was drop-offs to Juwan Roberts, to Reggie Chaney, to Javier Francis. At one point, I think he did have one on the break to Marcus Sasser. Great touch and feel of the defense on those drop-offs. I think those look really easy to do on television, but they're really, really hard to do in practice. If you think about like the actual action you're trying to pull off there, and worth pointing out, that's all of that action, whether it's the one on the break to Sasser or penetrating the defense and drop one off to Roberts, those are all actions you get when you're as aggressive into the paint as he was. Jamal Shead did have 4 fouls, could you argue too aggressive, but getting into the lane and dropping those off is an act of aggression of itself. And when they're rotating the ball around the perimeter, he sees the tiniest window, he's through it. And I've made this reference before, but he plays basketball to me, and I mean this in the most positive way, like a running back. The way a running back sees a small sliver in the offensive line and wiggles through it, he sees those kinds of slivers in defenses, and wiggles through, right? Now, I think what's fascinating about that is again, because statistics tend to lean offense, his defense was tremendous, right? Shead had 3 steals, and I actually thought he had 4, but I guess they called one a deflection. Digress. And all of those steals led to fast breaks, right? All those steals lead to baskets of some kind, and they really did a great job. This comes up in the X's and O's segment of pushing the basketball. Now, the last caps off moment goes to a pair of guys, and Emmanuel Sharp and Reggie Chaney off the bench come in and played key minutes. Reggie Chaney played 16. Emmanuel Sharp played 20. Sharp came in at one point when Shead had foul trouble. Chaney came in at one point where Juwan Roberts had foul trouble. And both guys understood their role as a bench guy. They didn't come in and try and be Jamal Shead and Juwan Roberts. They came in and tried to be Emmanuel Sharp and Reggie Chaney and did their jobs very well in a way that complimented the team and led ultimately to a Houston Cougar victory, right? Along the way, Emmanuel Sharp has become known as sharpshooter because that is what he did. Now, he shot 1 of 3 from 3. It was a backbreaker in the second half when he made it, though. Temple was kind of making a run. They thought they had something going, a little bit of momentum, and boom, Emmanuel Sharp from 3, right? But his energy defensively, not something Emmanuel Sharp was known for. And on this podcast earlier in the season, you and I talked about how that was kind of his weakness. But in the 20 minutes he came in the game, he hasn't played defense like Jamal Shedd. His hands aren't quite as active, those kind of things. But he's got this broad chest, and that's what he's putting in front of, moving his feet to get in front of with that chest. In a really, really doing it really, really well, and much better than he did at the start of the season. Also worth saying, he's a little more than a year out removed from that crazy injury he had in high school. But that was really impactful, and part of the reason that he got to play the 20 minutes he did. And frankly, when you're looking for a sixth man or a first guard off the bench, it's kind of why he's taking that spot a little bit. Obviously, we all love Beaumont's Terrence Arsenault because he's a hometown kid, right? He's the kid we're all familiar with. And there are some things offensively that Arsenault does so well. But why I think Arsenault ends up coming back to his sophomore year is because the defense is still schematically moving a little fast for him. He looks like he's thinking a little bit more. And for most freshmen, that's totally understandable. For a team with NCAA title hopes like Houston, they kind of have to play somebody else. They can't let them grow through on the court in the same way. And that's no knock to Arsenault. Again, he is an impactful player, and there will probably be a tournament game that they need his offense in. It's just taking. He's a teenager, right? Like, he is a teenage kid playing against a bunch of, especially after the COVID year and extra red shirts, and against a bunch of grown men, right? And so we'll see him develop more, I'm sure. But Sharp, for the meantime, has played very well defensively, taking that spot. The other sub I mentioned was Reggie Chaney, who came for Juwan Roberts when he had the 2 fouls in the first 5 minutes, and really, really, really got after. I mentioned the Tremont Mark miss off the Jarace Walker could have been an assist. That was really impressive pass to me. Chaney rebounds that miss and finds Jamal Shedd for a 3, right? Like, those kinds of things happen when Reggie Chaney's in the game. And he's a crazy, crazy good energy guy. Speaking of good energy, if you are looking for a way to get your energy back, you're like getting back into this swing of things and getting back in shape for the new year, and you're continuing it into February. First off, hats off to you for continuing your New Year's resolution into February. And second, let me tell you about our buddies at Built Bar. Now, Built is a delicious treat that has less fat and calories than other protein bars, and it tastes like a candy bar because it's covered in real chocolate. I know that my goal is to eat a little bit healthier, and if yours is too, you don't want to compromise taste. I got the thing for you, and it's Built Bar with Built. Healthy can actually be tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you. They're perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in that 100% real chocolate. Like I said, that's, again, 100% real chocolate. And they come in unbelievably good flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, all kinds of crazy good flavors. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like candy while maintaining amazing macros. They are actually healthy at 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've told you at Locked On Sports to get your Built Bars at Built.com. You can still do that, but you can also get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, you can run and grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors brownie batter and churro. Trust me, you can thank me later. Now, my favorite bar that they have is the coconut almond. As we talked about before, I am an Almond Joy guy, was an Almond Joy kid, and that thing tastes just like an Almond Joy. Do it today. If you can't go to BuiltBar.com or don't need it faster than that, go to Walmart, Sam's Club, get your Built Bars today. All right. So in the third segment, I said we talk some about X's and O's, and there are kind of 4 things I noticed in this segment to kind of quickly touch on that kind of defined the game. First, from the jump, in transition offense, Houston was going to push everything. Every steal and every rebound was going to be flying up the floor and moving the ball ahead in a kick-ahead pass. One going to be dribbling, right? That's from the first possession Houston had. They kicked ahead to a Marcus Sasser 3 on the fast break, right? He pulled up for 3 in transition with no other guys on offense down there for him. That was the kind of speed they were working with. It played that way out all game, whether it was Jamal Shedd dropping off to Marcus Sasser in the 2-on-1 break at his own steal, or Jarace Walker on the tip out that ended up getting to Marcus Sasser led to that crazy Euro step. All of those things happened because whenever Houston could, they pushed the ball fast. And the deal is that early, when Houston was down 4 at halftime, it almost looked like they were going too fast. And frankly, a critic might say they were. But what that did was, over the course of the game, it wore Temple down. Temple had trouble getting back. Temple had trouble getting a rebound because they've been chasing guys back. Temple started sending guys back to not get beat over the top instead of sending them to go hit the offensive glass. The scheme was not a short-term victory in the first 5 minutes, but over the course of a 40-minute basketball game, trusting that the Houston Cougars would outrun the Temple Owls. Thought it worked really, really well. It seemed very clear from the get-go that that was the MO of the Houston Cougars, right? Defensively, I thought it was interesting that Houston didn't really change what they were doing. And the post-game, there was a moment where someone asked about, hey, Temple came out the gates firing and made a bunch of shots. What adjustments you make at the half defensively? And Sampson said none. They hit a bunch of crazy, crazy jump shots. I mean, Caleb Battle falling out of bounds, three different falling away. 2 of them were out of bounds. 3-point jump shots in the first half. He didn't make those in the second half. Frankly, he shot 2 of them and did not make them in the second half, right? Post-game, Sampson saying they didn't make any adjustments makes me think what's interesting there is their understanding. And while they are a young basketball team, again, they start a freshman. They play a couple freshmen off the bench. Javier Francis didn't really play last year. Tremont Mark last year, I guess, was his sophomore year, but he missed most of the year hurt, right? Young basketball team in a lot of ways. And they never wavered from the game plan. The game plan was force, tough, covered jump shots. And if Caleb Battle beats you that way, we go back to Houston, tied for first place in the conference, losing tiebreak, right? Like you just live with making tough jump shots. And at halftime, I think there was a lot of us online, you're shaking your head, a lot of us online thought that that's how that was going to go, right? There was no worry for Houston, though. That was never going to happen. They knew the averages would regress back to the mean at some point. I also was interesting in the half-court defense. The one thing he did say they transitioned out of at halftime, and I think he was trying to give credit to his son Kellen in this instance, was that they traditionally, Houston traps ball screens, right? They have for most of Sampson's tenure, and when they're really good at that. Right. And what Temple started doing was slipping the ball screen, right? Slipping big guys like Reynolds or Junkic or whomever. I think Zach Hicks did it once or twice, slipping guys out of the ball screen to, break away open on the way to the basket. Right. What Houston did at halftime was they stopped trapping the ball screen. They actually overplayed the screen with the guard, right? Popped through. And what that meant was they typically ended up on the ball. So if I'm going over the screen, my ball in my left hand, and he overplays it, that guy's now at my left hand, and I can pick up the ball and get rid of it. But if I'm not ready for that, if my scouting report did not say that's how the guy's going to go, they're getting steals, but getting hands on the ball in that left hand because it's right in front of their face, right? Now, if it's in my scouting report, I can come back through and all kinds of things and whatever. But when you're breaking your own tendency, you're catching them off guard for steals like that coming out the gates of the half, right? The other thing that was interesting there is that to make that work, Sampson said in the post game, what they did was they put their big man in like a half drop. He didn't drop away the basket, but to protect and play both and be active, he's at kind of like the elbow, the free throw line area, and could be active in the passing lanes because of the energy of Roberts, Chaney, Francis, Walker, etc. They have active, aggressive big guys, and also they could play both in a way that the aggressive guard play, I guess you could funnel him back into the big, but you have an aggressive big, and he could play whoever it was could play the pass. They still looked like to me had help side covering up and tagging the roll. So if they did get beat over the top, they'd someone take a charge. Felt very sound defensively. I think again the issue there is if you play a team that can shoot well off the dribble and it's in the scouting report, that might be a problem. But that was a great move at a halftime when they have limited time to talk about what to do afterwards. And honestly, it's just so different than stuff they've done, ways they played the ball screen beforehand. Half court on offense, if they ever got to half court on offense, whenever they found a mismatch or when they thought they had, and a lot of the times it was Jairus Walker, they went to an empty side mismatch. They'd run some sort of a pick and roll, pick and pop kind of action on the empty side to get the mismatch, the ball with a lot of space, and then they'd space out with Sharp or Mark or Shed or Sasser, whomever the other guards were. And a couple times it was a mismatch for Sasser, and then they put Walker at the top of the key. And then they spot up a shooters and let him play on the empty side. That's how you end up getting a couple kick out threes. Houston did shoot 9 of 21 from three, 42.9%, which really, really makes that strategy look really genius when you make all your shots. And then they also then eventually in the later part of the second half found Juwan Roberts for a bunch of dump offs down low, just little drop offs when they decide not to come off the shooters. Then the windows are different. Really, really liked the empty side stuff. Gives guys good room to operate, and frankly, we've seen great things out of Jairus Walker in that short corner isolation spots. I also like seeing Tremont Mark there, and so I'm confident that if it's a game where he's hot, they'll go back to it. But I feel like in this game they went to it because it was Jairus Walker initially. And then when Jamal Shaw was able to distribute out of it, they were kind of toasted. On the whole, it's just a brilliant game for the Cougs. I know it looked like simple offense, and it was relatively simple. However, I really, really enjoyed hearing about Sampson talk about his post-game halftime adjustments. He talked about them in the post-game, talked about his halftime adjustments. If you want to talk about Cougar basketball, football, adjustments, halftime adjustments, Rockets, Astros, anything, find me at Painsworth512, PAINSWRTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all forms of social media. I'll be happy to talk all things with you. Thank you all so much for listening to Locked On Cougs Day. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of Locked On Podcast Network, and my recommendation for your second listen of the day is going to be Locked On College Basketball, because they got a really, really difficult job where they try and pick who the number one team in the country is. I think that's us. Let's make sure you go listen to Locked On College Basketball and hear them break it down, and I'm sure they'll have the exact same thought, right? Right, Andy? Right, Isaac? Go check them out. Thank you all so much for listening today. Locked On Cougs. Go Cougs!